While TrueLearn, open parentheses, close parentheses, yes that's its full name, not a typo in my video title, has an excellent premise combining the desire many of us have to understand machine learning and AI before the robots kill us all, and wanting to understand all the noises our pets make. While TrueLearn doesn't quite live up to that fascinating premise right now and could have done with more time in early access, however, developer Luden.io has already proven responsive to customer feedback, and in 6 months to a year I wouldn't be at all surprised to see While TrueLearn living up to its cool concept. As things stand, I'm giving While TrueLearn 3 stars out of 5, which is average on my scale, but I recommend you keep an eye on it. There's a lot of potential here, especially with the idea of coding for startups, and at $13 it doesn't require a huge financial outlay. On that note, I received a free review copy of While TrueLearn from the developer. While TrueLearn is centred around a struggling programmer who can't figure out why his code isn't working. He takes a short break, during which time his cat fixes the problem with the code. The programmer decides to create a program that will help him understand his cat, which is definitely the next logical step instead of just becoming a better programmer. You start off designing basic cat facial recognition software and gradually work your way up to interpreting all those random purring noises they make when they aren't licking themselves. If that all sounds horrendously intimidating, then fret not, the missions are nearly always straightforward puzzles with a number of possible solutions, plus an optimal outcome that will get you a gold medal. Each puzzle starts with inputs on the left hand side and desired outputs on the right. Using nodes, you must get the inputs into the right output boxes, sometimes with 100% accuracy, but not always. You essentially create decision trees. The nodes have fairly basic operations such as identifying colours or shapes or splitting server load. However, the puzzles can still get complicated, especially if you minimise server cost and maximise profit. Each time a new node is introduced, you're told how it functions in the game and given a few paragraphs about how it was discovered and used in real life. Progression throughout the story is linked to the development of these nodes from the 1930s through to the present. I certainly appreciated the attempt to teach my ignorant self the basics of programming, but I don't think I learned a lot of practical information due to the limited nature of the missions. Recurrent neural networks and perceptrons sound confusing as hell in theory. In the game you just connect them up and they do their job with little effort on your part. The main story path is especially guilty of making you perform the obvious. It's little more than a series of tutorials with barely any difficulty curve to speak of, so in theory you could blitz through it in an hour or so. Even late in the game you're given tutorials that are almost patronising in their simplicity when what you desperately want is further explanation of the more complicated concepts. For example, one of the nodes I used a lot early on was called Decision Tree Colour, which can split 2 colours. This is a foundational node that I used in most puzzles. After around 4 or 5 hours I was given the same decision tree node except for shapes instead of colours, and the game insisted I complete a tutorial for it, even though I'd been using effectively the same node for a while. That time would have been better spent explaining more about how, say, armour nodes work. I held out hope that the end of the story would have a big challenge requiring you to put all the skills you learned to the test to build the ultimate cat translation machine, but nope. It was another insanely easy puzzle that barely took any time to solve. None of this is to say that While TrueLearn is easy, by the way. It certainly has its challenging moments in the optional content, which lets you earn money when you're not working on the cat translator. Clients email you with problems such as needing to sort clothing or predict the outcome of elections. The cheaper and more efficiently you can create a software solution, the more money you'll earn from the project. Earning gold medals in some of these assignments is incredibly tough, and there were a couple when I called it quits at bronze or silver or skipped them entirely. I can't complain about the lack of challenge in these assignments, but I do wish the puzzles played out slightly differently. Despite the email explanations of each assignment, you never actually need to know anything about the story behind the colours or the shapes or what you're doing. The puzzles always start out with the inputs and required outputs. We're given an explanation behind the inputs in these assignments, so it would be nice to get involved in identifying what the inputs and outputs need to be. It would be much more engaging if we had to take the client's problem and translate it into a coding issue ourselves, which we would then solve. While TrueLearn's best feature is the ability to invest in startups and work as their CTO. The quality of the software you develop for the startup directly determines how much income the startup generates, and you can cash out your shares at any time for a profit. The coding for the startups is much more open-ended. Instead of being given a specific time and efficiency target, you're allowed to go nuts and place up to 50 nodes to do whatever it takes to sustain as many users as possible, while keeping server costs down. It's an excellent idea that's poorly implemented due to a lack of feedback. The startup will generate profit initially and then start losing money with no indication as to why. I tried to improve the code by coming up with a more efficient design, but it didn't seem to make any difference. You can't even compare your patch to the previous version to identify what changes you're making. There's also a hype meter for each startup, and I've no idea how to do anything about it. There's just nowhere near enough information. The startups have such cool potential when you think of how this could be used. One of them sees you effectively creating your own version of Amazon. I imagined starting off with a simple program for a small company and expected the code to turn into an unoptimized behemoth as the company grew, and I kept altering the code to keep up with the new demand until one day I had to start from scratch and rewrite the code to improve the entire experience. A bit like when a website becomes overly convoluted and publishes its big redesign. That's what I hoped for. The reality is that you create a code and then either make money or lose money with little idea as to why. I hope the developer spends time improving this aspect because this is the part of Wild True Learn that has the potential to hook me in the long term. Unfortunately, lack of player feedback is an issue that permeates the entire game. When a new node is introduced, you're given an incredibly short explanation and a tutorial that is so simple it's effectively useless at teaching you anything about the mechanics. There's no help section, and if you need support you're constantly referred to the dev's Discord server. To be fair, the developer is incredibly responsive on there and happy to help, but this sort of thing is far less acceptable once the game is out of early access. The required information should be in the game already. Having little knowledge of machine learning beyond how to spell it, I initially thought I was just being my usual dumb self when I got stuck. However, looking at the Discord server and Steam forums, I saw a lot of people who clearly knew their shit, or at least were good at faking it, who seemed as confused as I was. Given that Wild True Learn is primarily a puzzle game, not a test of your programming knowledge, this is perhaps expected. But it does mean the game itself is doing a poor job explaining its own mechanics. Don't even get me started on the car driving tutorials that you do as part of a self-driving car mission. I take heart knowing that I'm not the only one confused by these, but it's so odd that I don't even know what question I would ask to try to understand them better. The lack of decent feedback and tutorials is most noticeable around the custom nodes and DLL files you create. Custom nodes are solutions from previous puzzles that you can reuse, not just to save your own time but to make the program more efficient. I'm not sure why reusing an existing code makes the program more efficient, but I'll take it as fact from people clearly far cleverer than I am. What I don't understand is why they're so inconsistent in the difference they make to any given program. Sometimes the same custom file will save processing time and others it won't. Custom nodes are supposed to count for however many nodes are inside the custom node. However, once I had 3 nodes inside a custom node and only counted as 1. I'm tempted to say this is a bug, but with so little information available on how they work, I can't say for sure. It's also annoying that you can't make basic edits to custom nodes. For example, if I have a node that spits out only red squares and trashes everything else, you'd expect it to be easy enough to change this to spit out blue triangles instead, and then use that in your new program. Except you can't. Well, you can make changes, but it won't work. Although once it did. Again, I've no idea if this is a bug or not, or how they're supposed to function. DLL files are solutions you can make yourself and then use in new programs. Again, providing more efficiency. Sometimes. Other times they just won't work. I once took a program that I knew worked, copied it over into a DLL file, and then tried to dump the DLL file into the program. The DLL file refused to spit out any of the inputs, and I've no idea why. Other times they worked as intended. Using DLL files can make a mockery of the puzzles. After all, if you're patient enough to go and make separate DLL files for each puzzle, you should be able to get the gold medals fairly easily. It's cool that this recreates an element of real-world programming, i.e. don't reinvent the wheel, but it breaks the puzzles. As does the system of hardware upgrades that unlock as you progress. After completing the main story and going back to some of the earlier puzzles that I didn't have golds on, I found I was able to get the gold by using the exact same setup as before, but because the nodes processed information quicker now, I got a better outcome. This sowed seeds of doubt for other puzzles, and I started to wonder whether it was even possible to get golds before acquiring upgrades. It probably was, but I have to wonder why you would let players break the puzzles in your puzzle game. You can also spend money on cosmetics for your tiny apartment and even decorate your cat. This all looks pretty cool even if there isn't a lot of space to show off the toys you bought. I guess our programmer is based in San Francisco. While True Learn's basic concept is fun, and I see a lot of potential here. While I came out a little negative on it, I played for 8 hours in one day, so it must be doing something right, even if I'd like to see a few changes. First and foremost, the developer needs to work on a decent help menu, better tutorials and player feedback so that you know where you're going wrong. I also wouldn't complain if the UI was cleaned up and looked less like something I should be playing on a tablet, and a little more like the Zachtronics games it's clearly inspired by. I actually preferred the visuals in the early access version, but whatever, it doesn't have a huge impact on gameplay. After that, I would remove the option for custom nodes and DLL files from the main puzzles entirely. Give us the nodes we need and make us solve the puzzles with those nodes. Custom nodes and DLL files should be exclusively for use in your startups, which would ideally be fleshed out a bit so that you feel like you're truly building a business. Custom nodes would also then serve as a reward for completing the normal puzzles. The more puzzles you complete, the better your startup can become. As it stands, Wild True Learn doesn't give enough opportunity for creativity to be satisfying as a tool for creating weird and wacky stuff, and as a puzzle game it practically encourages you to cheat. It's like doing a crossword puzzle with heavy use of Google. With that in mind, I can't recommend Wild True Learn yet, however you should consider sticking it on a wishlist and seeing what happens. A lot has changed since the early access version, which shows the developer isn't scared to make changes. Give it a look at the end of the year when it might be finished. Okay, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting like, subscribing and sharing to the appropriate places. I also have a Patreon where for $1 a month you get your name in the credits and a Patreon role in my Discord server. I'm still on schedule to get the Icewind Dale video up by the end of January, so keep an eye out for that one. Plans beyond that are a little all over the place because I'm moving house at the beginning of February. Keep an eye on my Twitter for more notifications. Alright, thanks for watching. Cheers.